The text came in at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, just as the late afternoon sunlight slipped across my apartment's exposed brick walls. My desk was littered with coffee mugs, notepads, and color-coded folders, evidence of a busy week working from home. I was deep in financial projections for a new tech venture when my phone buzzed beside me. I glanced over, expecting something ordinary. Instead, I saw the preview. Ashley, Rachel, I need to talk to you about Saturday. I didn't open it right away. My chest tightened. I already knew what was coming. Ashley, my older sister, had been dropping hints for weeks about her upcoming baby shower. Her group chats had become a parade of Pinterest boards, florists, and caterers, nothing but the best, of course, for the big day at the Hudson View Country Club. The club was an institution for families like ours: old money, river views, gleaming marble floors. My parents had been members for decades, and Ashley's wedding reception there 3 years ago was still spoken of in reverent tones at family gatherings. My own relationship with the place was complicated, to say the least. Growing up, I'd always felt like a guest at someone else's party, even when my name was on the list. The other girls wore Ralph Lauren and played tennis. I wore hand-me-downs, read novels behind the snack bar, and counted down the minutes until I could escape back to the city. No one ever said it out loud, but it was obvious. I was the quirky daughter. Not polished enough. Not ambitious in the right way. I finally opened the message, hands already prickling with dread. Rachel, I need to talk to you about Saturday. I know you were planning to come to the baby shower, but honestly, I think it would be better if you stayed home. The guest list is very refined. Lots of important people from Brian's firm, my college friends, all doing so well for themselves, some of Mom's charity circle. You'd just feel out of place, and honestly, you'd embarrass us. I can't have you showing up in thrift store clothes and driving that old Ford. This is important to me. Please understand. My eyes stung as I read it again, each sentence more carefully constructed to sound polite, but the message unmistakable: you don't belong here. You'll ruin the picture I'm painting for these people. For a moment, I stared at the text, the words blurring at the edges. It didn't matter that I was nearly 30, or that I owned my apartment in Brooklyn outright, or that my company had just closed its second round of funding. In Ashley's world, I was still the embarrassing little sister, the failure who dropped out of law school, the one who wore vintage on purpose and drove a car with a cassette player. I closed my eyes and let out a long, quiet breath. The truth is, I'd always been different, and for most of my life, I'd paid the price for it. Family dinners felt like interviews where I had to justify every decision. My parents' friends would ask, "So, what are you up to these days?" in that special tone reserved for people who haven't quite lived up to expectations. At every wedding, every Christmas, every funeral, the message was the same: we love you, but wouldn't it be easier if you were just a little more like us? I used to think it would hurt less as I got older. It didn't. Some wounds get deeper because they're never allowed to heal. But today, sitting in my sun-drenched apartment with a city skyline just outside my window, I felt a new flicker of something else. Call it defiance, or maybe just exhaustion with pretending. Maybe it was time to stop letting their opinions dictate my story. As I sat with that feeling, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Ashley, as if she couldn't help herself. I know this sounds harsh, but you have to understand, these people judge everything: your appearance, your job, your lifestyle. I can't have them thinking our family is struggling. Brian's partnership depends on maintaining certain appearances. I hope you can be understanding about this. Maybe we can have lunch next week instead? A bitter laugh escaped me before I could stop it. These people judge everything. If only she knew. The struggling little sister she was so eager to hide was worth more, financially, at least, than most of the families at the country club combined. But that was my secret. My choice. In a world obsessed with appearances, I'd learned the quiet power of invisibility. I got up from my desk and walked across the apartment, trailing my hand along the bookshelves I'd built myself the first year I moved in. Every detail of my home was something I'd earned. Not with my last name, not with family connections, but with grit and sleepless nights and the conviction that there had to be a different way to live. I stood at the window, looking out over the city. My city. I thought about the years I'd spent feeling like I was too much and not enough, all at once. The years of biting my tongue, making myself small so other people could feel big. Maybe Ashley was right. Maybe I didn't belong at her baby shower. But for the first time, I wondered, why should I want to? My phone buzzed for a third time. I didn't even look. Not yet. I wasn't sure what I was going to do next, but I knew one thing. Whatever came next would be on my terms. For the next hour, I tried to work, but my focus kept slipping back to Ashley's words, each one pressing a thumb against an old bruise. I could almost hear her voice, the way it always went soft and reasonable when she was about to say something hurtful. I could picture her sitting at her immaculate kitchen island on the Upper West Side, carefully crafting her texts so they sounded more like tough love than rejection. The truth was, Ashley had always been able to push my buttons with just a few well-chosen phrases. As kids, she was the golden child, straight A's, prom queen, perfect hair. She moved through the world with an ease I never had, and she knew it. My job, as far as the family was concerned, was to orbit around her, the quirky little moon to her perfect sun. As I looked around my own space, I realized how much of my life was invisible to Ashley and everyone like her. To them, my immodest apartment was just a quirky starter home for someone who hadn't figured things out. They didn't see the wall of computer monitors alive with real-time data, stocks, crypto, international markets. They didn't know about the hours I spent poring over market analysis, the risk and strategy that went into building my company from nothing. My old Ford wasn't a sign of failure. It was a badge of freedom. I didn't want to chase every trend or spend money to impress people who'd never really see me anyway. I wore thrift shop clothes because I liked them. My neighborhood, with its coffee shops and noisy stoops, felt more like home than any gated suburb. But that wasn't the story Ashley told herself. In her mind, I was just a Rachel, the disappointment. The one who left law school with 3 semesters to go. The one who could have been anything, if only she'd made the right choices. I glanced at my phone again. Her last message was still glowing on the screen. I opened my banking app almost without thinking, a bad habit, but one that always reminded me how far I'd come. The numbers stared back at me, almost absurd. $43,917,805.40 in my primary checking account. The result of a wild few years, a handful of lucky breaks, a dozen sleepless nights for every win. I felt a strange satisfaction, but also a kind of sadness. I'd built all this for myself, but I'd never shared it, not really, with anyone in my family. The secret had grown so big that it felt like its own living thing, coiling around every holiday, every birthday, every awkward dinner where my parents asked, "So, how's that little business of yours?" On a whim, I took a screenshot. For a moment, I hesitated. Was I really going to send it? Was that who I wanted to be, the person who threw money in someone's face to prove a point? Maybe. Or maybe I was just tired of pretending. I attached the screenshot to a new text and typed, I think I can afford appropriate attire for your party. I sent it before I could second guess myself. The phone rang 30 seconds later. I answered on the second ring. Rachel. What is this? Ashley's voice was high, already teetering between disbelief and panic. Is this some kind of joke? Where did you get this screenshot? My bank account, I replied calmly. Walking back to my window. It's current. If anything, it's a little low this week. I just made some investments. She sputtered. You can't have that much money. You work from home. You live in that tiny place. You shop at Target, for God's sake. I let her words hang there for a second, savoring the absurdity. I work from home because I run 10 companies and I like to be hands-on. I live here because I love the building. And I shop at Target because I like their stuff. None of those things have anything to do with my bank balance, Ash. There was a long, shocked pause. In the background, I heard the faint clink of dishes and what sounded like Brian asking something in a low voice. Ashley finally found her words. Rachel, what are you even talking about? What companies? I sat back down at my desk, glancing at the folders stacked beside my laptop. Well, there's Brightwave Tech, which I started after I left law school. It's a software consultancy now working with 3 Fortune 500s. Data Pulse Analytics, which I bought out 2 years ago and just sold last month. Pulse Property Group. Stop, as she whispered, her composure unraveling. Just stop. A strange calm settled over me. I dreamed about this moment for years, imagined finally saying it all out loud. But now that it was here, it didn't feel triumphant. It just felt sad and honest. I took a breath. You and Mom and Dad have spent so long worrying about my future, but never once did anyone actually ask me about my work. You all just assumed I was failing. But I've been building something real. There was nothing but silence on the other end of the line. At last, Ashley's voice crept back, small and trembling. Are you really saying you're worth that much? Like, right now? Yes, I said quietly. At this very moment, that's just the liquid stuff. If you count my equity in my businesses, real estate, and everything else, it's more like 70 million. Maybe more after this quarter. There was a stunned inhale, and then I heard a soft, ugly sound, the kind of ragged sob that only comes out when something cracks deep inside you. For a split second, I felt guilty, but only for the way I'd forced her to see what she never bothered to ask. I waited. Finally, Ashley's voice broke the silence, raw and shaky. I had no idea. Oh my God, Rachel. Why didn't you ever tell us? 100 answers crowded my mind, but the simplest one tumbled out. You never asked. You never wanted to know, not really. You all had your story about who I was, and you never let me be anyone else. Another long pause. But why didn't you say anything all this time? We've all been worried you were, like, struggling or failing. I closed my eyes, searching for words that wouldn't sound like an accusation, even though, deep down, they probably were. Because, Ash, Every time I tried to talk about my work, about my projects, about what I cared about, the conversation just drifted. You'd change the subject or start talking about Brian's latest promotion or Mom's charity events. I got tired of having to defend my choices to people who already made up their minds. I could hear her crying now, stifled and embarrassed. I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I don't know, Rachel. I was scared. Scared that you'd show up and everyone would judge us and think we weren't good enough, or that you weren't good enough. Her voice broke again. Something in me softened, the old big sister instinct rising up even as I remembered all the years of being an afterthought. I get it, Ash. We all get scared sometimes. I know how much you care about appearances. But the truth is, what other people think isn't nearly as important as what we know about ourselves. She tried to pull herself together. But, you must hate me now. You have every right to. I shook my head, even though she couldn't see me. I don't hate you. I'm disappointed. Yeah. I wish you'd trusted me enough to want me at your shower, no matter what I wore or drove or did for a living. I wish I didn't have to prove my worth to you. But I don't hate you. Ashley was silent, but her breath came in short, jerky little gasps. When she finally spoke, she sounded younger than I'd heard in years. I just wanted everything to be perfect. I didn't want people to judge our family. But I judged you instead, didn't I? You did, I admitted gently. But you can change that now. There was a long exhale on the other end, and when she spoke again, her voice was steadier, but softer, too. Would you still come to the baby shower? Even after everything? I smiled, letting the tension drain from my shoulders. I'll come. But not because you know what's in my bank account. Because you're my sister, and I love you. That's always been enough for me, even when it wasn't enough for you. I could practically hear her tears falling. Thank you. Oh, Rachel. I don't deserve you. We're family, I said, and for once, the words didn't feel like an obligation. She hesitated, then whispered, Can I ask you one more thing? Please don't tell Mom and Dad about this yet. I need to tell them myself. I need to be honest with them, with everyone. I have to explain why I did what I did, and why it was wrong. That's fair. But Ash, even if I really was broke, or struggling, or lost, I'd still be your sister. I'd still deserve to be included, and loved. For a long time, she didn't answer. When she finally spoke, it was barely a whisper. You're right. Oh God, you're right. All these years, I let other people's standards decide what mattered. I'm so sorry, Rachel. I need to do better. A gentle peace filled the space between us, replacing years of silent competition and resentment. For the first time, it felt like maybe, just maybe, we were having a real conversation, not a performance. For a few long moments, the line was quiet except for the shaky sound of Ashley collecting herself. I glanced at the window. Sunset was slipping over the skyline, painting the city in gold and orange. I realized I felt strangely light. Maybe it was relief, or just the novelty of finally speaking honestly with my sister. Ashley's voice returned, gentler now. I keep thinking about all the ways I've judged people. Not just you, everyone, really. I measured so much by appearances, by what people seem to have or not have. I'm embarrassed by how small that makes me sound. I let her words hang in the air for a minute before responding. We all do it sometimes. It's easier than getting to know who someone really is. But I think you're brave for admitting it. She gave a weak, watery laugh. Brave? I feel like a coward. All I did was hide behind what I thought success should look like. That's what everyone at the country club does, Ash. They're just better at pretending it doesn't hurt. Ashley sniffled, and then said, "Oh, what happens now?" "I mean, with us. With the family." I considered. "Now you decide. You decide whether you want me at your shower as your sister, not as a resume or a bank balance. And you get to show our family, and maybe yourself, that love isn't conditional." She sighed, and I heard resolve enter her tone. "I do want you there, Rachel. More than ever, actually. I want you there as you are. Not dressed up, not pretending, just a you." "I appreciate that," I said, and meant it. Ashley hesitated. "Do you think, if you ever feel ready, you could tell Mom and Dad about your companies yourself? I think they need to know who you really are, too. I think I need to know more, honestly. You're not the person I thought you were." I shrugged, even though she couldn't see me. "Maybe. But what matters is that you finally asked." There was a pause, then a quiet laugh. "So, should I tell Brian to stop worrying about the seating chart? Because you might actually be the most successful person in the room." I grinned. "That's not what I care about. I just want to show up and celebrate you and the baby. And maybe, just maybe, let some of those perfect people realize that success isn't what you think it is." Ashley's mood was lifting. "You know, all these years, I thought you were just stubborn. But you were building something I didn't even see." I was stubborn. And I was building. But mostly, I just wanted you all to love me for me. She sighed, but there was warmth in it this time. "Well, I'm going to try harder from now on. I promise." It struck me then, maybe this was all I'd ever wanted from my family. Not applause. Not admiration. Just the space to exist as I am, no explanations or apologies required. Before we hung up, Ashley said, Will you help me become a better sister?" I felt something deep in my chest shift. "I can be here for you, Ash. But the only person who can change your perspective is you. You just have to remember that everyone deserves kindness, even when they show up in old jeans." She laughed. "Deal." I put my phone down, feeling a quiet exhaustion, but also a little hope. The rest of that week passed in a kind of dreamlike haze. Ashley kept her word, texting me updates about the shower. Real, friendly updates, not just logistics. She even sent me a photo of her baby's nursery, inviting my opinion on the paint color. It was the first time in years I felt like she genuinely wanted my thoughts, not just my presence. Meanwhile, my phone buzzed with work, investor calls, emails, group chats with my development team. The market was wild, and every day brought some new opportunity or crisis. I thrived on the chaos, but now, with this fresh truce in my personal life, I noticed a new spring in my step. Friday night, Ashley called one last time. Her voice was steady, even excited. "Okay, final head count is in. You're sitting next to Mom. And, by the way, Wear whatever makes you comfortable. I smiled. You might regret that. She chuckled. No, really. I mean it. You could wear pajamas if you wanted. Don't tempt me, I teased. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear. I went about my usual routine: coffee, journaling, a run through Prospect Park. When it was time, I reached into my closet and pulled out a dress, blue linen, simple but flattering, the kind you could wear anywhere and feel right. I didn't give a second thought to my shoes or my bag or the old Ford waiting for me in the garage. For once, I didn't feel the need to apologize for being myself. Driving up to the Hudson View Country Club, I saw rows of luxury cars, BMWs, Teslas, a few Range Rovers. I parked my battered Ford between two SUVs, took a deep breath, and walked through the familiar doors. Inside, the place was alive with laughter and light. Ashley spotted me first, her face breaking into a real, grateful smile. Rachel, as she called out, waving. You look amazing. Thank you for coming. I squeezed her hand and hugged her. Thank you for inviting me, I replied, and meant it, for the first time in a long, long while. Ashley's baby shower was exactly what I expected: beautiful, elaborate, and somehow both intimate and intimidating. The room was filled with carefully arranged flowers, sparkling glasses, and a hum of polite conversation. Everywhere I looked, there were familiar faces from our childhood country club days, women who knew my family's name, and men from Brian's law firm who wore tailored suits and gold watches that caught the light. For a moment, I felt that old childhood anxiety sneak up on me, the urge to shrink, to hide behind a potted plant or fake a phone call. But then I remembered the way Ashley had smiled when I walked in, the way her eyes had softened, not in pity, but in genuine welcome. That warmth gave me courage. Ashley ushered me toward a small circle of guests near the windows. Rachel, I want you to meet some of my college friends, as she said, squeezing my shoulder. This is Kayla. She works in publishing. And this is Erin. She's in finance. I smiled and shook hands. The conversation started the way these things always do: small talk about work, neighborhoods, how we all knew Ashley. But before long, the questions turned to me. So, Rachel, what do you do? Kayla asked, friendly and genuinely curious. I'd always dreaded this question at family events, but something in me had changed. I didn't want to hide anymore. I run a few tech companies, I said. Mostly software development and business analytics. I work with startups and small businesses, mostly, but lately we've branched into consulting for larger firms. Erin's eyes widened. That sounds impressive. How did you get into it? I shrugged. Not downplaying but not boasting either. I got interested in coding during college, left law school when I realized it wasn't for me, and just kept building things. One thing led to another. For the first time in years, I talked about my work openly. The conversation felt easy, natural, like I'd finally let myself be seen. Erin even pulled me aside later, asking if I'd be interested in talking to her company's analytics team. I could see Ashley watching from across the room, her eyes shining with a different kind of pride, one that had nothing to do with money. As the afternoon wore on, I found myself enjoying the party. I chatted with old neighbors, laughed with Ashley's friends, and even caught up with my mom, who seemed genuinely interested in hearing about my projects. At one point, Brian came over, shaking my hand and grinning. Ashley told me you're something of a tech genius. If you ever want to talk about automation for my firm, let me know. I laughed. Sure, Brian. I'll send you my calendar. By the time dessert was served, tiny, perfect pastries on silver trays, I realized something had shifted. The awkwardness I'd braced for never arrived. No one asked about my car, my clothes, or why I wasn't married. No one tried to compare me to Ashley or fit me into a box I'd outgrown years ago. They just saw me as Rachel. Later, as the party wound down, Ashley came to find me. You have no idea how happy I am that you came, as she said softly, squeezing my hands. I want to be better, Rachel. I want my daughter to grow up seeing what real strength looks like, not just fancy parties or fancy titles. I felt tears prick my eyes, not of sadness, but of something closer to hope. She'll be lucky to have you as a mom, Ash. Ashley grinned, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like we were truly sisters again. As I drove home that night, the city shimmering around me, I replayed the afternoon in my mind. It was such a small thing, one family gathering, one change of heart, but it felt enormous. For years, I'd measured my worth by other people's expectations. Now, I realized the only expectations that mattered were my own. At a stoplight on the edge of Brooklyn, I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My eyes were tired but bright, my lips curved in a real, unforced smile. For the first time in years, I saw myself not as a disappointment, but as someone who belonged, wherever I chose to be. That night, Ashley sent one last text, a thank you for today. I'm proud you're my sister. I wrote back, I'm proud of you too. And I always will be. The days after the baby shower felt strangely peaceful. For the first time in my adult life, I didn't feel like I was carrying an invisible weight every time my phone rang. Ashley sent me updates about the nursery's wallpaper, funny photos of baby clothes she couldn't resist, and even links to parenting blogs that made her laugh. Her texts were chatty, normal, like friends who just reconnected after a long absence. One evening, as I was making dinner, a simple salad and grilled cheese, comfort food after a hectic day, I found myself smiling at her latest message. Rachel, should the baby's room be mint green or pale yellow? Brian says either is fine, but you have better taste. I laughed out loud. I used to hate being asked for my opinion by family, always sure it was just to humor me. Now, it actually felt real. With work, too, I noticed a shift. My meetings were as intense as ever, brainstorming with my dev team about the new app rollout, negotiating with a stubborn venture capitalist who kept asking about my exit strategy. But inside, I felt more grounded. For so long, I'd worn my family's disapproval like a scratchy sweater I couldn't take off. Now, it was as if I'd finally found a way to shrug it off and let my own warmth in. I thought a lot about that conversation with Ashley, about what it means to be seen, and what it means to see someone else for real. I wondered if I'd spent so many years hiding in plain sight because it was safer to be underestimated than to risk rejection. Maybe, I thought, we all wear disguises for a while, until life shakes us out of them. Midweek. Mom called. Her voice was lighter than usual, no edge of worry or tension. Ashley says the baby shower was a hit, as she chirped. And she said you were the star of the room. See? I always told your sister you do fine if you just put yourself out there more. The old me would have bristled at that, but now I just smiled. Thanks, Mom, I said. It was a really nice day. She paused. Rachel, I'm sorry if we ever made you feel, well, left out. You know we love you, right? A lump caught in my throat. I know. I love you too. We talked a little longer about the baby, about family plans for Thanksgiving, about the weather in New York, still unpredictable in spring. When I hung up, I realized just how much a single honest conversation can ripple through a family. A week later, Ashley called late at night, her voice barely above a whisper. I told Mom and Dad everything, she said. About how I disinvited you. About why. About the bank account thing, too. They were shocked. But I think they get it now. I wanted to be the one to tell them. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. You did the right thing. That took courage. Ashley sniffed. I just didn't want any more secrets. And Rachel, I told them the part that matters most. Even if you'd had nothing, you still deserve to be there. A rush of gratitude flooded through me. Thank you, Ash. She hesitated, then added, I think Mom's going to need a little time to let it all sink in. Dad too. But we're all learning. And I'm really trying to be different. I don't want to be the person who measures worth in numbers or brands ever again. Hey, we're all learning, I replied softly. That's what families are for. Messy, complicated, but always trying. Ashley chuckled. You're wiser than all of us. I smiled, but my thoughts wandered. Maybe wisdom just meant making peace with your own story, even the parts other people would have written differently. Later that night, as the city lights sparkled outside my window and the world seemed hushed, I sat at my desk and opened a photo album I'd kept hidden in a drawer. There were pictures of me and Ashley as kids, riding bikes in Central Park, grinning with ice cream smeared on our faces, arms flung around each other as if nothing could ever break that bond. I realized, maybe nothing ever really could, not for good. Spring faded into summer, and for the first time in years, I felt excitement for family gatherings instead of dread. We started new rituals, weekly phone calls, silly group texts, and long Sunday brunches at little cafes near the river. Ashley grew more confident as her due date approached, sending me baby name options and photos of her growing belly. I realized I was looking forward to becoming an aunt, not just out of obligation, but because the wall between us was finally, blessedly, gone. One afternoon, as I was walking home from a meeting, Ashley called with a sense of urgency in her voice. Rachel, can I ask you something real? No judgment. Of course, I said, a little nervous. She took a deep breath. Do you ever wish you'd done things differently? I mean, law school, the traditional path, the house in the suburbs. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you tried to fit in? Her question surprised me. I thought about the path I'd chosen. Late nights building software, wild risks, days when all I had to eat was a packet of ramen because I'd sunk everything into a business idea. I remembered how lonely it sometimes felt, hearing family members talk about mortgages and school districts while I calculated server uptime and conversion rates. But I also remembered the thrill of seeing an idea come to life, the pride in solving problems that mattered, the quiet contentment of walking through my own front door, a home I built for myself, not for anyone else. I smiled, feeling grounded. Honestly, sometimes I wonder, but I don't regret it. My path was messy and lonely, and not always glamorous, but it was mine. I wouldn't trade it for anything. Besides, the world needs all kinds of people, dreamers, doers, caretakers, rebels. It'd be boring if we were all the same. Ashley was quiet for a long time. I think I was jealous, as she said finally. You were brave enough to do what you wanted. I always felt like I had to follow the script. A bird chirped overhead, and I paused to let her words sink in. I was scared, too. I just learned to hide it behind work. Maybe the lesson is that we're all scared. We just pretend we're not. She laughed, a light, true laugh. That's comforting, actually. Good, I said. Now, is this just late pregnancy philosophy, or are you secretly plotting to quit your job and start a bakery in Brooklyn? She snorted. Har. No, but I want my daughter to know she can write her own story. I want her to see that there are lots of ways to be successful and happy. You're already teaching her that, Ash. After we hung up, I realized something. I'd spent most of my life trying to prove I belonged, trying to win my family's approval by hiding or shrinking myself. Now, I was finally learning how to let go, and, in doing so, was closer to them than ever before. A few weeks later, I was invited to speak on a panel about women in tech at a local university. I debated whether to invite my family. It was the kind of event where I usually played down my achievements, blending into the crowd. This time, I texted the family group chat with the event info and an invitation. To my surprise, Ashley replied right away, I'm so proud of you. I'll be there in the front row, giant belly and all. Mom texted next, I wouldn't miss it for the world. Even Dad replied with a thumbs up. The night of the event, I spotted Ashley, radiant and very pregnant, sitting with Mom and Dad in the middle row. Their faces beamed with pride as I took the stage. For the first time ever, I spoke without hiding behind modesty or self-deprecating jokes. I told my real story, failures, mistakes, successes, and all. Afterward, Ashley hugged me, whispering, a thank you for showing me what's possible. I realized the real victory wasn't in the money or even the moral high ground. It was in the fact that I finally let myself be seen, and my family finally wanted to see the real me. As the summer deepened, our family began to feel different, warmer, looser, more open. It was as if someone had finally opened a window in a stuffy room. When I met Ashley and Mom for coffee in the park, there was no more awkward dancing around the subject of my job or my lifestyle. We talked about everything and nothing, the upcoming baby, Mom's garden, funny stories from our childhood. One afternoon, as Ashley and I walked through the city, her hand resting on her belly, she turned to me with a new sense of confidence. I keep thinking about that day I texted you not to come. I still feel so guilty, Rachel. I stopped, taking her hands in mine. Ashley, you apologized. You changed. That's all anyone can ask. Besides, maybe it had to happen that way for us to get honest. She wiped a tear from her cheek, but she was smiling. Do you ever worry we'll slip back? That I'll go back to being, well, shallow? I squeezed her hands. Growth isn't a straight line. We'll mess up sometimes. The difference now is that we'll talk about it. We see each other, finally. That seemed to comfort her. We finished our walk in companionable silence, sunlight glinting off shop windows and the city humming around us. Later that week, I joined my parents for dinner. We ordered too much food and lingered over coffee as the city lights flickered on outside the restaurant. Dad, who used to avoid asking about my work, now peppered me with questions, curious, respectful, genuinely wanting to understand. "Rachel," he said at one point, "what's the part of your work you love the most?" I thought about it. It's building things that matter. Solving real problems. Helping people do what they couldn't do before. The money's nice, but honestly, it's about the impact. Knowing I made something that helped someone else, even if they never know my name. Mom smiled. "I wish your grandma could see you now. She always said you were meant for something different." We raised a glass to Grandma, and I felt that familiar ache, loss, pride, gratitude, all tangled together. A few nights later, Ashley called, her voice trembling with a cocktail of nerves and excitement. "Rachel, it's time. The baby's coming." I grabbed my overnight bag and dashed out the door, adrenaline spiking as I hailed a cab across the city. By the time I reached the hospital, Brian was pacing the hall and Ashley was already in the delivery room. After hours that felt both endless and like a blink, a nurse emerged with a smile. "It's a girl. Both mom and baby are perfect." When I stepped into the room, Ashley's face was glowing with exhaustion and joy. She reached for my hand. "Meet your niece, Clara," she whispered. "Will you be her godmother?" Tears sprang to my eyes as I bent over the tiny bundle in Ashley's arms. "There's nothing I'd love more." Brian grinned, and for the first time, I felt not just accepted but truly wanted in the family's most important moments. In the following days, I visited often, helping with diapers, taking late-night shifts so Ashley could sleep, even learning how to swaddle Clara with surprising skill. My parents came over, and instead of their old critical glances, they brought food, laughter, and gentle hands for the new baby. We sat together, sometimes in silence, sometimes telling stories, always united by a new sense of purpose. Ashley said once, watching me rock Clara, "I want her to grow up knowing she's loved for who she is, not for what she achieves, or how she looks, or what anyone else thinks." I nodded. "She will. You're already teaching her that." In the quiet of those early mornings, holding Clara close, I made my own silent promise to always love her, to always see her, to always show her that her worth has nothing to do with the world's idea of success. 2 months after Clara was born, I found myself back at the Hudson View Country Club, not as an outsider, but as part of a family that had finally started to heal. Ashley had insisted on hosting a small gathering to introduce Clara to her extended tribe, as she called it. The guest list included old friends, colleagues, and a few new faces from our changing circle. No pretense, no pressure, no competition, just celebration. This time, walking in felt entirely different. The nerves were gone. The stories people told about me were no longer laced with surprise or suspicion. Instead, I was just Rachel, Clara's aunt, Ashley's sister, someone who happened to know a thing or two about startups and whose brownies had won over the country club chef. I even drove my old Ford right up to the valet, and the attendant complimented it's a classic vibe. For the first time, I laughed and believed it. During the party, I found myself in easy conversation with Brian's colleagues and Ashley's friends. When someone asked, "How did you two sisters get so close?" Ashley answered without missing a beat, "We learned that family means showing up, not showing off." The room nodded in agreement, and I saw more than a few thoughtful smiles. It was a small thing, but it meant the world. At one point, Ashley pulled me aside, baby Clara gurgling contentedly in her arms. "I keep thinking about everything that's happened. If you hadn't sent that screenshot, none of this would have changed. Isn't that wild?" I laughed. Sometimes it takes a little shock to shake us out of our patterns. But really, Ash, it wasn't the money. It was the conversation that came after. The honesty. She nodded, her eyes bright. I want to teach Clara that it's never about what you have, but how you treat people. How you see them. I squeezed her hand. She's already got the best example. As the afternoon sun dipped low and the party wound down, I felt a deep sense of peace settle in my chest. The journey from rejection to acceptance, from hiding to honesty, hadn't been quick or simple. It took uncomfortable truths and painful admissions, but we'd made it through together. Later that night, when the guests had left and the house was quiet, Ashley and I sat on the porch, watching fireflies drift above the garden. Clara slept soundly in Ashley's arms, her tiny fist curled around one of Ashley's fingers. Do you ever think about how different things might have been? Ashley asked softly. All the time, I admitted. But I wouldn't change a thing. Every messy step brought us here. Ashley looked at me, her expression vulnerable and hopeful. Promise me we'll always talk. No more secrets, no more pretending. Promise, I said. We owe it to ourselves, and to her. In that moment, I realized that the truest kind of family isn't built on appearances, or shared genetics, or even years of tradition. It's built on the courage to tell the truth, to forgive, to start over as many times as it takes. The next week, as I returned to my own apartment, a space I no longer felt the need to downplay or hide, I hung a new photo on my wall. It was from the baby shower, taken by Mom, Ashley and I laughing, Clara between us, the sunlight painting everything gold. For the first time, I saw not just the joy of that day, but the long road it had taken to get there. I thought about my younger self, the girl hiding behind the snack bar at the country club, sure she'd never fit in. I wished I could tell her, you don't have to fit their mold. You're allowed to build your own life, to define success in your own terms, to love fiercely even when you're misunderstood. And one day, you'll find your place, not because you changed to fit them, but because you stayed true to yourself until they learned how to see you. In the months that followed, our family continued to grow, not just in numbers, but in spirit. We celebrated holidays together, invited each other's friends, and talked openly about our hopes, our worries, and our dreams. I spent weekends taking Clara to the park, teaching her silly songs and showing her how to spot the first blooms of spring. Ashley kept her promise, too. She never let herself slip back into old habits, but when she worried, she said so. When she messed up, she apologized. When I felt myself withdrawing, she reached out. We became, in the truest sense, sisters again, equal, honest, loving, real. One night, as I rocked Clara to sleep in Ashley's living room, I whispered the words I wished someone had said to me all those years ago. You are loved. You are enough. No matter what. Because in the end, that's the lesson worth more than any fortune, more valuable than any accomplishment. True belonging comes not from changing who you are, but from daring to be yourself and allowing others the space to do the same. Our story, like every family's, is a work in progress, messy, surprising, and beautiful. And for the first time, I wouldn't have it any other way.